Thumbnail of the Year award goes to Computer Programming University. So, tip of the day: measure twice, cut once. Measure twice, cut once. Let's talk about software design. More specifically, let's talk about requirements. Here you go. Basically, the concept behind measuring twice and cutting once is to eliminate the waste that comes from mistakes, which come from not having clear instructions on what it is that you're trying to do. A lot of times when people are working on certain projects, anything that requires any kind of measurement, the temptation is to skip a lot of that preparation because you just want to get started, right? You want to quickly move to a point at which you're actually doing the quote-unquote actual work, the real work, right? Because you're spending time planning and preparing and doing charts and having meetings and discussions. You haven't actually started building anything yet. However, the key component to be aware of is the time that you save by getting quickly into development, to doing the actual work. The time that you save by doing that, you lose that very quickly by making mistakes, which are a direct result of poor planning, right? So it's better for you to measure twice. So you're doing something where you got to cut something. It's better for you to spend the extra time to measure twice. The instinct is to measure once and then get to the cutting right away so I can get the cutting work done. That's the actual work, right? Or that's the way you look at it. But the idea is you hastily make a measurement and then you hastily make a cut and then you hastily find out that the cut that you made is incorrect. Now you need to find time finding more material to then again do a measurement again. And perhaps this time you learned your lesson, so you do 2 measurements. So now you're on your third measurement, right? So you have the acquisition of the materials. You have to go get another one, measure twice and then cut. You've added time to the project, and time is money. Whenever you're adding time to a development project, there's a cost associated with that time. If you're already doing development work, you already know what you're being paid. You're part of a dev team. Do the math, right? 5 developers working on a project. Take your salaries and add them all up, and figure out the hourly cost. It's a lot of money, so you don't want to waste time having things. You got to basically correcting mistakes, right? So let's get to requirements. It's cold. I almost said retirements. Let's get to the topic. Let's talk about requirements. So software requirements would be your measurement in programming. That would be, well, let's say a measurement sort of thing. It's a preparatory step that you do before you actually get into the actual real work of doing development. And it is a step that can save you a lot of time and money, right? Because in the beginning of a software development process, you want to sit down and put together some very clear and well-written requirements. So what is the scope of the application? What are the goals? How is it supposed to function? The intended purpose, what are the type of users that'll be using it? What are some concerns that the user's going to have? Things will come up, for example, latency. I'm in the financial world and investment banking. Latency is critical. especially in a particular part of the business referred to as high-speed trading. In high-speed trading, latency is everything. It dominates a lot of the conversations from the development standpoint, from the operational or support standpoint, even the business standpoint in terms of what the customers are paying for. A lot of it has to do with this latency, and it's very expensive. Whoa, that was a tight turn. It's very expensive for having a high-speed trading system. So just like with anything else, if someone's paying a lot of money for a product, their demands are going to be sort of matching with the costs at which they are paying, right? So you're gonna have very demanding customers, and if you have sold them on a product with a certain latency average or range, and you're not delivering on that, they're not going to be very happy. So a lot of development time is spent on focusing on meeting the latency goals. A lot of the operational support perspective or time is spent, making sure that you're staying within the advertised measurements, right? So again, requirements, critical part of software design, because for example, let's say you have been tasked with designing some kind of financial application. Within the requirements, you would want to put your latency expectations. This application should never at any time take more than X amount of time to do this task, right? Also, what is the expected load, right? We want to be able to process. So let's go through some just sort of pseudo requirements. So we want to be able to process 1,000 messages per second, right? All right, that's a metric. Good to know. Thanks for letting me know. I can put that into my notes when I'm doing my design. But what kind of messages are we talking about, right? What are the messages going to consist of, right? So I can get an idea of what kind of data we're talking about in terms of bandwidth. So we're dealing with, are we dealing with a 200 kilobyte file, a 1 megabyte file, 300 megabyte file? My lips are frozen, so I'm gonna start blah 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 blah. So sorry about that. Anyway, so what's the file size, right? And then what are we doing with these? How are we handling the files, right? It's not just the file size, it's also what we're doing with the files. Because for example, let's say you're developing an image recognition or detection program, and you're going to be processing 10 megapixel images, right? File size may not be that big, and if you just think in terms of the metric of how long it'll take to transmit a file of this size over a specific network connection based on the speed of that connection, what the bandwidth is on that connection. If you look at it from that standpoint, then you're very, very limited. You're looking at it from very, very limited perspective, and you're not doing it right, because you have to also consider processing time of the file, right? You got to receive the file, and then you also need to process the file. Well, if it applies to the application in question. In the case of an image detection or image recognition program, you're certainly going to be processing that image. It's not something where, because just to give you a perspective, so for those of you that don't get what I just said, what if the application is just an application that's just some kind of media management software, and all it's supposed to do is move the file from one location to the next with little to no processing at all? Then in that case, processing times are either negligible or irrelevant if there's no processing time, right? So all you need to consider is, okay, so you want me to be able to load 100 images per second. All right, so what's going to be the size? What's going to be the biggest image possible? What's going to be the average size of these images? What kind of images are they going to be? What format? Is it JPEG? Is it PNG, bitmap? So like, what kind of images are there? But the main thing is you want to know how much data we're talking about, because all the application is tasked in doing is transferring the data, right? But if the application requirements include some kind of processing, like an image detection software, then you can't just look at the size of the image, because the processing can greatly sort of overshadow the actual transmission time, because if you're doing some kind of advanced image analysis, then maybe a 2 MB file could take 10 minutes to process, right? So it could take 200 milliseconds to transmit and then 10 minutes to process, right? So you need to understand the full scope of things, you know, the size of the image and what you're going to do with the image, and so on and so forth. So again, what is the purpose of the application? How will it be used? What is the sort of context of the application that's being built? And you need to have as many details as possible. Security concerns. What about future plans? You know, right now you wanted to do this. In the future, is there something in the future that you're going to be looking to do with this product? Right? So all these things need to be discussed clearly in the beginning of the software development lifecycle. And again, what is the main reason for the focus on getting good requirements? So anyway, so I've been heavily involved in the software development process for, I don't know, at this point, probably a little over 10 years. I've been more focused from the business side of things, so I would actually be the one who might be writing the requirements. So I have a unique perspective in terms of some of the considerations. So as a developer, I'm going to tell you some of the things that you need to be thinking about when it comes to requirements beyond the importance of them. I mean, so again, the costs of not having good requirements in the beginning of the process, it grows considerably based on mistakes that come down the line. So if you find problems during the requirements phase, so they have a requirement of a performance metrics that doesn't really make sense based on some other metrics. So in context of other parts of the design, the performance metric does not make sense. So developers point this out in the meetings, and it's like, hey, you know, this isn't going to work. So now business needs to go back to the drawing board and reassess, you know, what they're trying to do and figure out how to address it. So development might give them some suggestions. They're like, okay, if you guys want this, we can do this, but you're going to have to change something else. By changing that something else, it's going to change the cost of the application. And by changing the cost, that's going to have a business impact. So business needs to go and sort of go back to the drawing board, and then there's an approval thing. So let's say there's time to come up with a new plan. Then there is time to actually get it approved. Like, hey, this is what we want to do. And then they agree on it, and then come back to dev and say, hey guys, all right, so we took your considerations, and we this is the new plan, right? The cost, there's a cost associated with that as well, right? That you're taking more time before you can actually start doing development. Now the sort of the pre-development stuff is taking more time and therefore cost. But the cost that you get there, they get greater and greater as you go along the process. So let's say you don't spend the time and do good requirements, and you start actually doing development, and early in the development process, you find mistakes. So there are heavy costs associated with making changes to the code as a result of mistakes and due to misinterpretation of the requirements, you know, inadequate requirements, whatever they may be. Then as you go along further in the development process, the further you go, the cost from mistakes and the cost from rewriting code get greater and greater and greater until they become extreme, to where a change at this point is going to take so much time. We gotta almost, it's almost like you're rewriting the entire application from scratch in a way. So that's a very, very bad thing. But from a developer, I would say what you can do to help the process is do your best to educate the people who are writing the requirements for you. Not everyone who does that is going to have any development experience. So the way that they're going to write and communicate to you may not be the best way, right? So it is for you to take responsibility as a developer that you are going to, acknowledge this problem, that you have someone that's communicating with you that does not understand your language, and you are going to address it by communicating with them and giving them tips and ideas in terms of how to better communicate with you what their needs are, right? So communication is a critical part of the whole process for every member of the team. So that is your communication burden if you really want to contribute the best or the most to the process. Don't have a passive approach and just, you get horrible requirements and you just complain, and then, the whole process suffers. Take ownership, right? You're in a team together, and even though your job is development and not business requirements, still the success of the project, is something that is going to benefit everyone, right? So if you see issues with the way the business team is doing things, well, make suggestions to them, help them out, help them help you, right? So illustrate to them what are the important things that you need to know, what are important pieces of information that you need to know to be able to do your job most effectively and accurately and efficient, right? Also make sure that they keep you guys as involved in the process as feasible. There's a point where there's too much involvement, where you guys can actually be I don't want to say distraction, but let's just say taking away from the process rather than adding to it. So there's too much of everything, right? There's a point where it's getting excessive. But you want to make sure you have the right balance of how much involvement you have in the entire process, from the initial discussions of what is this product we're going to build, and throughout the phase of the writing of the requirements. The more that they keep you in the loop, the right way, right? Giving you just the right amount of information, not too much and not too little, it can save everybody time. Because let's say they have some plan they're working on that's completely ridiculous, right? But you don't know about this plan until the very last minute, when they're giving you the requirements or something like that. You could have saved so much time. It's like, if we knew that this is what you guys were planning, we could have told you like weeks ago that this is a stupid idea. You know what I mean? Like, you could have saved a lot of time with that. So communication is essential. Make sure they're keeping you guys in the loop. Also, I would say, when you start the development, first of all, don't take weak requirements. Do not accept it. Don't be afraid to, step up and say, hey guys, these requirements are inadequate. I need more information, right? I need to know more about what you guys are trying to do. Can you help me out here? Like, what is going to be the file format? Why is it that you are requiring this feature? It seems a bit excessive for what you said you're trying to do. Am I missing something? Right? If you see something that's confusing or strange or anything like that, there might be a very good reason for that. And if you don't address it, you're going to see the reason for it come up with when you build something and they look at your code and they're like, what are you doing? Why would you do it this way? And then you say, hey, because the requirement said blah, blah, blah. And then they say, no, that's not what we mean. We mean something else, right? So there's a misinterpretation of what the requirements are stating. So if anything is at all not clear to you, speak up, say something, make them clarify it for you. And if they're giving you pushback, let them be aware of the costs associated with you not getting the information that you need to do your job. And then a later miscommunication happening where you have to go and spend time rewriting code. Feel free to remind them about the costs associated with rewriting code and making mistakes. Right? So when that does come around, because they didn't follow your recommendations, it's not on you. You advise them of the risks, you advise them of the proper procedure and the best practices, and they refuse to follow your recommendations. So it's on them, right? But step up, say something so that you're covered. And it's not just about covering yourself as well. Remember, it's a team effort. You want to work together. The success of the project is a success for everyone, right? Anyway, I think I've made my points very clear, and it's also very, very cold. So I am going to get to the house. I'm staying with family for the holidays. And I thought I would get out and get me some skateboard action and do a quick video because I'm reading my 800-page software design book, and I wanted to share with you some of the ideas and concepts that I'm learning in context of my professional experience. Because like I said, I've been in the software development process for probably a little over 10 years. Again, more from the business side of things, but definitely directly involved. So I'm in stand-ups, I'm doing software requirements writing, and a lot of communication with the development team. So I've seen all the issues, and communication is the most common one that we suffer from. Communication, a huge problem. If you want to be a better developer, one of the things that should definitely be on your list is how you can improve your communication skills. That is one of the most common issues that comes up in development. So, this is the Computer Programming University with a runny nose. Okay, keep my nose out of shot. With a runny nose, because my nose always runs when I'm in the cold or I'm in water. It's annoying, but that's my life. We all got our issues. That's my issue. I had someone say in one of my previous videos they thought I was using cocaine or something. Not using cocaine. I just because they saw me sniffling or something, but that's what it is. Anyway, hope everyone had a great Christmas, enjoying your holidays, be safe. Got all these drunk drivers doing the most. And until the next episode, this is the Computer Programming University, where learning is always fun, as it should be. Ciao, Vigets. Bonjour. Hasta luego. All right, guys. Shout out to my top subscribers, Nick, Igor, MJ Shahid, and every single one of you guys. All right, let me get out of here.